So this tutorial is going to teach you how to create one of these taxiway edge lights right here. It's a pretty fantastic method, I think. I learned it from a great member on the FS Developer forum from one of his great tutorials, and he has quite a few out there, which I'll get to in a second. And then, just so you know, these taxiway center lights, edge lights, centerline lights actually, as far as material settings go, exactly the same methods apply to them as these edge lights. Alright, so before we dive into things, like I said, I want you to just check out these tutorials. These are basically exactly what I'm going to teach, only they are in written form. And then there's this other tutorial which teaches you how to make the default runway lights show over your custom ground poly, which is the method I'm going to use when I get to working on my runway lights. Alright, so let's go. Alright, so what about textures? Well, there's not much to say about them. They're pretty simple. There's only two textures involved in this process here. The first one is just a light fixture. Basically, you have your base plate and the fixture, or the bulb itself, and basically just leave it up to you to find a picture of a taxi light, and then just cut it out of the photo and paste it into an image here or whatever. And so it doesn't have to be a very big resolution wise. This is like a 512 square image. And then after that we have a texture with two, I call these, it's basically your light bloom texture. So this one will be the texture we used to emulate the light emitting from the bulb. And then this texture right here will be used to emulate the light casting on the ground. Pretty simple. I just took a blue color, took the paintbrush with a graded edge to it there, pressed once, and then I just add a little bit of white to the center of that just to make it a little brighter looking. And here basically the same thing, only I had to erase the center, and so it's all kind of up to you about how, as far as how you want to go about it and what shade of blue and whatever. Although, you probably want to kind of stick to, real life counterpart as far as color looks, but this is basically what I came up with. So yeah, pretty simple there. Let's get started here. I actually am going to open up my previous model because I'm going to cheat here a little bit. What I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of take some of the measurements off of this model here, so I don't have to spend quite so much time, getting the proportions right and all that. So I'm just going to move this over to my other monitor over here. So I'll be kind of referencing to that model as I go along here. Alright, so without further ado, I think what we'll start with here is our bottom plane. So what I'm doing here, I'm just on my model here, I'm just checking the size of each plane. Alright, so our first plane is apparently 1/2 meter by 1/2 meter. So this is going to be the bottom of our light fixture. Alright, and of course now we need to zoom way in because it's so small. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and set, I always like to make sure I set everything at the origin after I create it, at least with this model. And I'm going to go back and find out our next plane, how big it is. Alright, so our next plane is going to be 2.5 meters in size, which in some ways seems a little large to me, but I guess it's right. So, alright, I'm going to go ahead and center this at 0, 0. Alright, and then we have our vertical planes for the actual sort of light fixture itself, including the bulb. That's one. Better go to my front view here. Okay. And so this plane should be 0.24 in length and 0.1 in width. Alright. I'm just going to set that well, it's not going to be quite at 0 on the z-axis, so I'm just going to drag it down here. Right there. Get it lined up well. And then I'm going to set the x and y to 0. Alright. So it looks like it's 0.12 above the z-axis. Alright, or up on the z-axis. So we have that. In the end, we'll have 2 of those planes, but I am just going to wait till I texture it, and then I'll duplicate it to make our cross plane here. Alright, then we have, I believe it's just one more plane we need to create here, and that is our triangular plane. So I'm going to go back to our front view. Just go like this. Alright. The way we create our front plane, we're going to create a square plane. And I'm just going to give it a square size for now, so maybe like 0.5 by 0.5. And then I'm going to convert this to an editable poly. Alright. And I'm going to select these 2 top vertices here. And I'm going to say collapse. Right there. Alright. And it looks like I want to scale these 2 out a little bit to fit my texture a little better, so I'm going to select these 2 bottom vertices, select uniform scale, and hopefully I can just scale the bottom vertices here. Alright, perfect. And I think that'll be good. Whoops. Now I just want to center this at the 0.00, so I'll leave the z height as is. Alright. So that'll be good for now. And again, I'm going to just leave this. I'm going to have to duplicate this triangle too, but I'm going to, of course, wait until I texture it. And actually, I guess we have one more object we need to create. So I'll go ahead and create that now, I guess. It doesn't really matter, but why not? Alright, and this is going to be a box. And we won't actually be using this box in our model, but you want to add it anyways. And I'll explain more later, but basically what this box is for is so that if you want to attach an effect, you can. Alright, I'm just set it all at 0, 0 for now. 0, 0, 0. And I'm going to scale that down a little bit because looks a little large to me. Doesn't need to be that big. And let's see. Go back to our front view. Probably just press F. There we go. I'm going to move this up right about there, where the light bulb would be. And that's that. Okay. So now we can get right down to texturing here. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go ahead and hide a couple of these planes. I'm going to hide this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to hide this box. So I'm going to go over here to display and say hide selected. And I'm going to select this and press hide selected. Alright. So I'm going to texture our light fixture parts first, I think. Alright, so it should be familiar to you. We're just going to say new material, So new, flight sim X. I'm going to just go ahead and set the specular down to 0. And there should be a button down here that says set default opaque or set default transparent. Okay. And we want to set default transparent here, I believe. Yep, that's right. If it's not right, I'll find out shortly. I'm going to click the button next to defuse here, bitmap. Navigate to my texture here. Hopefully I can find it. You end up, after so many years of scenery developing, you kind of end up having a lot of textures to go through. Let's see here. Taxiway stuff. And our light fixture, taxi light right here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this. I'm going to click the blue checkered cube and then say apply. I'm going to press smooth and highlight so you can see what it looks like. Okay, awesome. I'm going to go ahead and hide this triangle. Right, now we can see what we're doing a little better. I'm going to apply it to this plane as well. Okay. And I think while we're adding textures, we'll go ahead and add textures for everything else. So yeah, unhide all. I'm going to rehide that box because we don't want to see that. And I'm going to apply texture for this and that triangle. And these are going to be our light planes. At least that's what I call them. So flight sim X, set specular down to whiteness, diffuse, bitmap, Spokane taxi. We want this texture right here. All right. Okay, select apply. All right. Now we can get down to mapping these textures. So I'll start with this big light plane here first. Why not? All right. So we're going to go to our modify menu here. We're going to go down to UVW map first. And we're going to make sure it's set to planar. And we're going to set the mapping to the size of the plane. We could even double it, so say 5 meters. All right. And we're going to go to, there's actually a few ways we could do this. We could either use the gizmo, all right, and we could move it like, whoops, looks like we had a fatal error, so hopefully we can save that. No, always never like it when Gmax does that, but hopefully you can just reopen it here. All right. Should be right here. So it looks like everything's still there. Phew. Okay. That's always frustrating. Gonna use the gizmo and move it like this. All right. So you can do it that way, which works fine. The other way you can do it is after you set the UV mapping, we're just going to go to unwrap UVW, edit, pick texture, bitmap, and this is just to see where we're placing our mapping here, our UV here. So if I move it this way a little bit, that should be just about right. Right. So I'm going to close that. And we can always adjust it by moving the plane around just a little bit if we have to. But that is textured now. Okay. We might even scale the plane down a little bit. It might be a little large. Alright, so we're going to select this plane now. Because why not? I'm going to say UVW map. I'll go ahead and just leave the mapping as is. And then we're going to go to unwrap UVW, edit, and of course I have to pick the texture, bitmap, cancel, navigate to Navigate to Taxiway texture here. Let's see, I'm not even seeing our texture. So what's going on here? There we go. Select all the vertices at the UV map here. And we're just going to scale it down. And then move it. I'm going to make this a little larger so we can see what's going on here. Center mouse button click. Kind of pan around there. Alright, I'm going to kind of get this centered more or less. And then I'll have to scale it up a little more. Alright, just go ahead and scale it up. Just like that. That should be good. Close this window now. And that should be mapped. You might have to scale that plane though, but other than that, it should be mapped. Alright, so I'll map this plane now, so we're going to do the same thing. It's sort of monotonous. First of all, one thing I want to check here, be sure to do is, you see our mapping is set to 0.24 by 0.1 meters. We want to make sure our mapping is square. So if we set the width to 0.24 as well, we should have a square mapping. So it should be, whoops, I'm going to go ahead and delete that because that was the wrong thing. I'm going to go to Unwrap UVW, Edit, and once again pick texture. Unfortunately I have to do this every time. Gmax isn't all that smart in certain areas. Alright. Scale this down. I'll go ahead and make this window full screen. Move it over right about there. I'm going to try going over a little further. Alright, and I think I want to scale it down a little more. I want to leave a little margin on every, each edge, but it doesn't need to be too much. So like there, I probably want to scale that up just a little bit. Just to be sure. I'm sure that's close enough. Right about there. Okay. Close that window. And that should look pretty good by now. And now we just have our triangle to map here. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Make sure it's saved, which is always smart. Alright. Same thing, our texture should be applied. I think I applied it. We'll find out here in a second. So we're going to go to UVW map. Alright. Once again, make sure that the mapping is square. So 0.5 by 0.5. It doesn't really matter just as long as you hit square. We're going to go to Unwrap UVW, Edit. And we're going to do this one more time, guys. Sort of gets a little tiring after a while. Pick texture. Could be this texture right here. And this time we're going to select that part of the texture. Use that part of the texture. So, okay, let's see. First use the move tool to kind of get in the right spot. And then we're just going to scale this appropriately. Now I find it's important that you make sure that all of the blue, so all of your color, is within your UV map here. If you let it even slightly drift outside of the UV mapping here, you're going to see kind of a hard edge on your light plane when you look at it in Flight Simulator. So like if you had your line going right through here, you kind of see this kind of hard edge on your light, and that would look pretty bad. So always good to make sure you have plenty of room on all sides. That's what kind of makes this a little tricky, getting just right. or positioning just right. And right down here, I'd be a little concerned that this might be a little close to this right here, but we'll find out. All right, go ahead and close that. That actually looks pretty good though, so I'm not too concerned. Anyhow, a lot of times you just have to test things. So I'm gonna go ahead and we have to kind of scale some things here. So for starters, I'm gonna select our triangle here. I'm gonna go ahead and rotate this 45 degrees. Doesn't really matter which way, but okay. I'm going to select this. This base is way too large, and that is all fine. We just need to scale it. So make sure you have uniform scales on. Okay, and this I find I just have to eyeball it. I really don't know how to determine the size. I mean, you could, I guess, you know, you'll probably be able to find the measurements somewhere, but I just eyeball it. You can usually get it close enough. So, you know, might be about right. Maybe it's a little large yet. So what I'm going to do is just scale it down a little more. If you couldn't guess. So be right about like that. Okay. Once again, you can always, you can scale this to whatever size you want. This light plane here looks a little large, so I'm going to go ahead and scale it. Right about there, doesn't look too bad. Maybe a little smaller. Don't want too much, we don't want too little. Just kind of a fine line. And it looks like we need to center it a little bit, so I'm going to go to the top view. I think I can just press T. Possibly to get to the top view. Maybe not. Okay. Set to smooth and highlights so we can see what's going on here. And it looks like we're going to have to move this up slightly. To the right slightly. Looks like to me. Let's go ahead and just go back to smooth and highlights here. I'm just experimenting for a second. Alright, that looks good. And while we're at it, I'm going to go ahead and move this ever so slightly upwards on the Z axis. So, 1/100ths of a meter, probably enough. Again, you're not going to really notice it in Flight Simulator. So, and it just avoids all the flickering issues. It looks like I need to move it this way a little bit. It's sort of hard to tell, but that's pretty close. So the last thing we need to do is just duplicate these. So what we'll do, we'll just select this, use the rotate tool, hold down shift, make sure we're rotating on the Z axis. So right there, hold down shift. That's obviously the wrong axis. I'm going to cancel that. Try this again. There we go. And of course we want to rotate this 90 degrees. So right there, I'm going to set it as an instance. Press OK. That looks good right there. Okay, so it's coming together here. Now we just have to duplicate our vertical light plane here. Rotate this, of course, 90 degrees. Okay. A little less. There we go. And then, of course, you can experiment with this. I'm going to take a look here at my other model. But one thing you possibly could do, if you felt like it, I didn't, and it seemed to look fine as is, but you might experiment, just to give you an idea. You might experiment creating another plane. I'm going to rotate this 45. Okay, let's see, right about there. So then I can just rotate it on the y-axis here, 90 degrees. Alright, and then just, of course, if you're doing a larger airport, maybe you may not want to do this if you have like a lot of taxi lights, but as far as polygon count goes, but I'd be kind of curious to see what this looked like in Flight Simulator. To do 3 cross planes like that. It might like make the light look fuller, or might cause issues. You just never know. Anyhow, just a thought. In fact, I think I'll leave it there and just see what it looks like. All right. So that's basically our light model, guys. So next step, I'm just gonna go over to see how we place these. Okay, so before we move on to exporting, I just want to take a quick look at how I place these taxi lights, all 1,366 of them. So pretty basic. If you have your reference image or images, depending on what the case may be, all you have to do is just start duplicating taxi lights. I went for I hand placed each one. There are other ways you could say if you have like a very long taxiway or something. If you feel so inclined, you can let's see here. I'm just gonna make a copy here real quick. You can use an array if you want. So you go Tools and you say Array, right? And what we do here, basically, we pick how many we want. Typically, I would use instance, and then we just pick if you want to scale it, and we don't. Want to rotate it all? Nope. All we want to do is just move it on the y-axis a few meters. So, pick however far you want to go, and let's see if this works. Alright, so as you can see, we just duplicated that light on the y-axis. So if you have a long straight taxiway, you could do that. If it's going this way, of course, you duplicate it on the x-axis, and you figure out an appropriate distance between each light. The only catch is that all your lights are going to be evenly placed, which doesn't seem to be, at least it doesn't seem to be quite the norm in real life. As you can see, even on the straight stretches, it turned out that the lights were closer together at some points, and they're farther apart at some points. So, you may want to take the time to hand place everything, and you get a little bit more of a realistic placement of your taxi lights. But if you have a really large airport, it might be worth it just to use the array tool, and at least get down some of the straight stretches of the taxiways and stuff. But anyhow, that's one way of doing it. But of course, like I say, all I did to place my taxiway lights was just to select the light, hold down Shift, and use the Move tool. Just duplicate it, right? And did that a bunch of times. So that's pretty much all there is to that. Really is no easy way of going about it. Okay, so anyhow, yeah, you can see there's just a lot of taxi lights. So let's just go ahead and maybe just export these. So since we included a box in our light model, and since we're not going to be using it, let's go ahead and make sure we don't select it. So I'm going to just actually say select all first, and then I'm going to scroll up. To the box's end. Right, I'm going to deselect. Oh, shoot. Let's try it again. This can be a little tricky sometimes. So I'm going to deselect. Boxes. Maybe what I'll do, I'll start up here. Press Control, left click. Alright. Just go down. Should be right. I'm gonna say select. Alright, now there's other things we want to deselect. Hopefully I named them. So you want to deselect tile 8, which is just my image tile here. Right, now say select again. Alright. There we go. So now just our taxi light should be selected. Alright. I'm going to say File, Export Selected. Select MDL. I'm going to move or export this to the folder with my textures in it. So let's see here. Textures, Blender textures, and Taxiway stuff, I think. And I'll just use one of these like Taxilight 02 for the name. Go ahead and save that. And I'll just say yes to that. And this generally takes a couple, a little while. So you'll see, it does take a little bit. So anyhow, I'll just leave this to export for a second. And be right back. Okay, so we're in the final stages here. All we have left to do is just to export our light model here. Convert and place object to wizard, and then we're going to go to navigate to a file, and in this case I know we exported our large file with all the light placements, but in this case, so you guys can kind of see what's going on, I'm just going to open up Gmax here. Run as administrator, of course. And let me quickly export. Let's see here. If I can find it. There we go. I'm going to quickly export this light model of ours. So I'm actually going to export. I'm actually just going to select everything. And of course, we don't want to export our box, so we'll just say export selected. And we'll export it to same folder as our textures are in. So we go to, let's see here. I have a scenery development, textures, Blender textures, Taxiway stuff. Save it as an MDL file, and I'll just use one of these namings here. Taxiway 02, why not? Save, remotely place that. Whoops. Forgot to set a guide, so we need to go to FS Tools, LD name tool, create a new guide. That works. I'm going to say file, export, selected once again. And I'm just going to say one light. Why not? That'll work. Save. Press OK. And we're good to go there. I'm just going to import that into Model Converter X. Okay, so you can see our light model here. Everything looks okay. It all imported correctly, so that's a start anyways. Alright, so we can go to, first off, going to go to Material Editor. And we have to start correcting some settings here on our textures. Okay, the first one, and first of all, I'm going to select both textures at once. So I'm just going to select one, then hold down Control, select the other. I'm going to set these settings the same on both. Alpha test function, we're going to set this to greater or greater equal. I'll use greater equal. Test function, I usually use a value of 100 or 128. And z-test alpha, you're going to set to true. Okay. Allow bloom, that's fine. Assume vertical normal, you want to set that to true, usually. Double-sided, in this case, we need to set that to true. Okay. No shadow, you could set that to true, but you want to usually keep it false just because performance-wise, it is the best option. Everything else looks good here. Final alpha multiply, we're going to set that to 0.5. Let's set alpha value at render time, set that to true. And everything else, I think, we'll just leave as is. Now we're just going to select our first texture, the light fixture texture. And all these settings should be good. All we need to set here is just add our night map texture, so we're going to navigate to it here. And that is going to be Taxi Light Night. Alright, perfect. Okay, and then here is the one that's a little more tricky, or has a trick involved, I should say. We're first of all going to add our night texture. Well, actually, first of all, so at the moment we have our night texture mapped as our daytime texture. We don't want that, so I'm going to actually completely remove this. So you have to select it, press backspace, and completely remove that texture. Then I'm going to add our day texture, which of course is just pure black. Okay, that looks good. And then go to our night map texture here, and add our light texture here. Okay. And so now you're thinking, well, you know, if this is what it looks like in Flight Simulator, that's going to look pretty bad. And you'd be right, but what we're going to do here to fix this is we're going to mess with the blend settings here. So to start out with, we're going to use inverse destination alpha. No, yeah, that's right. And then we're going to use source color. I think that would work. We should use inverse source alpha. Let me check here. Let's see here. Source color and inverse source alpha. Okay. So that's not working for us for some reason, which is fine. Let's see what it looks like at night. Let's try these settings. 1 and 1. Okay, and that looks like it's working for us. Okay. So I may just go ahead and use that. We'll see how that looks like in Flight Simulator here. Now, before I actually go ahead and export this, I just want to discuss a couple things. When you have, because in this case I just imported one light model, but when you import your large model with thousands of taxi lights or however many you have in it, if it covers a large distance, well, you're going to have to you're going to have to figure out a way to correct your model for the curvature of the Earth. Okay. And so if you go up here, there's the FSX Earth Curve Correction tool here. And so you enter the coordinates of your model, where you're going to place it. All right. And you also use the show map function here. And now you have an option here: correct geometry and animations for curve of the Earth, and correct attach points for curve of the Earth. So attach points is if you're exporting effects. Geometry, of course, is just for regular geometry. So you want to select this and say correct. Okay, so now I always find that Earth Curve Editor is not perfect, and it seems like I have to actually elevate my model in Gmax above ground just a little bit to make it work correctly. But once I do that, everything works out fine. As far as effects go, I'm not using effects, and so I don't have too much experience with that. I know there are times where it doesn't work like it should, or like you'd think it would. So anyhow, that's something you're going to have to experiment with, but it's sort of the same idea. Anyhow, I'm just going to export this single light, but I think for purpose of this tutorial, I was considering enlarging it a little bit. Well, first of all, I'm just going to export it to a random place. Let's see. Go zoom out all the way here, and hopefully my internet doesn't make this take too long. I think I'll export to Lewiston, Idaho. Because why not? Let's see here. There's the airport. It's a great regional airport if you ever like flying Horizon or Alaskan, or even, you know, a Delta connection. This is a great airport to fly into right here. I'm going to place the airport right smack on the runway. I'm going to place the light on the runway somewhere, just so I know. I'm going to actually place it kind of where the taxiway enters here, so I kind of know where to look for it. All right. And let's see here. Just to be on the safe side, actually, I'll leave the scale as is. In fact, I need to actually figure out how large our light model is, because it's going to be super big, I think. So I want to check the size of this plane. Oh, it's actually about right, I think. So actually, it's not too bad. I was getting confused with a different model I was working on. All right, so it is the right scale. Never mind. All right, let's see here. So I'll just leave the scale as is, or I could make it a little bigger, but I think it's fine. The only reason to make it bigger just so you guys can see it, or I'm more likely to find it in Flight Simulator. But anyhow, let's just export it here. So I'm going to say convert, assuming everything is good to go. And let's see. We'll see how it turned out in FSX. Okay, so here's our taxi light in Flight Simulator. And of course, the first time I went to look for it, I wasn't able to find it. And so after probably about an hour of just tinkering with things and trying to figure out, you know, making sure that it was large enough that I was going to be able to see it in the first place, making sure all the textures, all the files are in the right place and added to the scenery library. And then it dawned on me that, if you look here in Model Converter X, that I needed to, well, you have to give me a second actually to load this in. Hopefully I can load it. Okay. Well, anyhow, what I had to change was the alpha test function, which is going to be right here on the top of your material settings. I had it set to 128, and I had to decrease that because at the setting I had it at the moment, it was wasn't going to show any of the texture, just going to show alpha channels. So had to turn that number down a little bit. I turned it down to 100, which worked pretty well. The light fixture is still a little transparent, so I actually had to turn the alpha test function down on that a little more. But anyhow, so that's one thing to remember, is that you might want to, I mean, depending if it doesn't show up at 128, you might try 100 or even less. It really all kind of seems to depend. I've used 128 before and it's worked. So anyhow, I do like that extra plane in there, that horizontal plane. That's really nice. So, yep, hope this was a useful tutorial for everybody. Took me a while to figure out how to create taxi lights or a good way to create them. So, anyhow, just catch you later.